Hi guys, PhoenixReborn here once again. I'm here with Slight Quills and Desmond, aka Become Death in Blood Bowl.
Hello.
We're going to be doing a team analysis, looking over the various teams for Season 1. So let's start from the beginning. We've got the team Secret Pardons, the High Elf team. They've elected to buy 2 blitzers, a thrower, and looks like 8 linemen with 3 team rerolls.
Yep. Yeah, this is more or less a standard setup. It involves all of your blitzers because you want to have all your punching potential. And it's kind of an intelligent choice to leave off the catchers because the catchers tend to level up faster than the rest of your team. So very often you want to kind of like leave back your catchers, buy them later so that everyone else has a chance to level up and your whole team can level up consistently. Because if you have any one person leveling up or any one player leveling up over the rest of your party, then they're going to be the target for your fouling targets because a lot of your team value is going to be wrapped up in that one unit. And again, if they take out that unit, then there goes your team value, and it can tank games.
Quite a few teams this season have decided to not take catcher roles, like my own.
Yeah, that was one of the things I kind of recommended to other players. I know that like the temptation is always there to have the catchers to win games quickly, but in the long term, so about like halfway through the tournament, there'll be some growing pains with regards to that. And again, people can then start fouling those catchers and leave people out of the games.
Yes. 3 team rerolls, that's pretty standard. 2 or 3 is pretty standard.
Yeah, you usually want to buy up to the maximum that you can buy because, again, the rerolls become more expensive.
Indeed. Let us move on to the Amazon team, the Amazonian Duelists. This is my team.
All right, well, maybe you could talk a little bit about your choices here.
Yes, I elected to buy 2 throwers, all 4 of my blitzers, and 5 linewomen. I chose not to get any catchers for the exact reason we were just talking about with the last team. I can buy them later, and their cost isn't going to increase after the first game. And once I do buy them, they'll be racking up points through catches and scoring touchdowns. I am
here's the question I have is you do have a little bit of a trade-off here because you have a lot of dodge. You don't necessarily need 5 rerolls, I don't think. Well, that's my personal opinion. So why 5 rerolls?
Why 5 rerolls? Because all of my players, even my catchers, all have strength 3. So when it comes to teams that will be a bit more bashy, that all have strength 3 and 2 or 3 big guys, for example. I was supposed to play my match with Varen, and we had some technical difficulties, so that match got reset. He has all 3s with a couple of 4s. So I am numerically beneath a lot of teams strength-wise, so I'm going to end up throwing a lot of one dice blocks. So having those rerolls allows me to reroll those 1 dice blocks and be able to keep up in that manner.
Okay. So those rerolls are kind of primarily for the actual like blocking dice and not necessarily for dodges.
Yes. Dodges I have better odds on than most teams. They're not amazing odds, but they're pretty decent. And I elected not to get an apothecary. I decided to take a gamble for week 1 and hopefully not get injured players so that I can get a 5th team reroll. Like I said, team rerolls will double in cost after the first match, while an apothecary will stay at 50k.
I want to say that after watching that first half, though, are there any concerns? Because your armor was breaking a little bit more than one would suspect for that kind of a matchup. I think that there was 5 armor breaks total in 10 turns, was it?
Something like that. I was having a lot of armor breaks in that first half that we did get to play. I'm a little concerned about it, but not too concerned. I feel like Varen was rolling a little overly well on his armor breaks than would normally occur.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Why don't we move on then to the Chaos Dwarf?
Yes, this is Desmond's team, who is in this channel.
Hi. My theory with my team is that it was too expensive. I'm 10 TV down, but that's because I couldn't afford another reroll at 70k. Chaos Dwarves have very expensive rerolls.
That they do.
So instead of, I would have to have sold a Bull Centaur for a Hobgoblin to really get anything worth the team reroll. So I just opted to take an Apothecary instead. This team is quite tough, but most of their players are really expensive, especially the Bull Centaurs.
Yes,
so losing
Bull
them on a
Centaurs
bad
are
dice roll would just
130k
be
apiece.
the worst.
Going through your actual player count, it looks like you have 2 Bull Centaurs, 6 Chaos Dwarf blockers, and 3 Hobgoblins with 2 team rerolls and Apothecary.
Do you think that the low overall team rerolls that you have are going to cause problems in your next few matches?
In my personal history with Blood Bowl, being able to reroll dice that you mess up hasn't actually helped me not mess up. So I think team 2 rerolls is fine. I'll just mitigate damages with the dice I have to roll and try to work with it.
I will definitely say, as the coach of the Amazonian team, this team scares me. 6 blocks and 6 tackles on those Chaos Dwarf blockers. That scares me.
Well, the one good thing that you have over them is their movement is going to be 4, and I believe the Amazons are 6.
I believe
Or
they're
are they
6.
5? They're 6. Okay.
They're
And
6,
and
the
so
Catchers
yeah,
are 7 or 8.
you wouldn't think that wouldn't be like
They're all
a
movement
huge
6.
disadvantage, but it makes a big difference. Like, the dwarfs cannot go from one side of the pitch to the other. So if they swing over really
definitely.
far one direction and overcommit, there's a good chance you can get around them.
Absolutely, and that will be what I'll be looking for when I get to that match.
Yeah, the typical
Indeed.
strategy for Chaos Dwarves, because they differ from normal Dwarves in the sense that, as you said, they are movement 4 for Dwarves, but the Hobgoblins and the Bull Centaurs have 6 movement. The Bull Centaurs can actually make a really safe go-for-it roll with Sure Feet, and that effectively allows you to cover your flanks when you position your Chaos Dwarves in rough spots like that. So I'll be keeping a Bull Centaur back to defend against flanks, and probably keeping the Hobgoblins to make plays running forwards.
That will definitely be interesting to watch this team unfold.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what kind of happens with that, especially when the High Elves meet up with the Chaos Dwarves, what that will look like.
Oh, yes, indeed. Let us
All
move
right,
on
let's
to
take a look. Yeah, Lizardmen.
the Lizardmen, coached by Tim the Grim. I like Lizardman teams. They're a lot of fun.
Ooh,
this team
he elected to have a Croxagore.
Yes, he has gotten a Croxagore and all 6 Sauruses. That is very expensive.
All right,
but
so
it's going to be very powerful.
I like the prehensile tail.
Yeah,
prehensile tail on the Croxagore is very nice.
The only problem is our league overall is more bashy than it is dodgy. So the prehensile tail might not see as much use as perhaps the Croxagore's strength overall. The one problem that this team is going to face is that the fact that you only have 4 skinks. So these are the only 4 ball carriers that you're going to have in this whole team. Now, I know you guys were watching the first half of the game that I was playing in, but the undead team that I was facing, which we'll see in the future here, also has only 4 ball carriers. And in the case of this team, no apothecary. So once these ball carriers go down, this team has no way of moving the ball down the pitch. So this team will be forced to kind of defend those skinks for their very lives. And when you have 2 team rerolls, that's going to be kind of challenging. I would have almost elected for 2 less Samurai in exchange for more rerolls. What about your thoughts, Desmond?
I mean, I understand where the saving of money is going, because the reroll is expensive again for the Lizardmen teams. I think I would have actually not taken the Croxagore, because as you said, the league is bashy, but it's actually a low strength bashy league. There's not many people with high strength on the teams. Most of them are strength 4.
We don't have
Not
like
many
a
strength
Camry
5s.
team or a Ogre team who has 4 or 5
Yeah.
5 strength players.
There's an ogre around, and I believe there is a beast of Nurgle, but I think this Croxagore is one of the only 3 big guys in the league. I don't know that I would have kept them. I might have actually gone for an extra skink and an extra reroll instead of the
Yeah.
Croxagore.
I agree. That's definitely one of the ideas that I would do.
I may have gone for that as well, but I definitely see the line of thinking going for only 4 skinks and having this really strong bashy Croxagore and Saurus combination. It'll definitely be interesting to see how this plays out, and this team will definitely rely on the coach's skill as a Blood Bowl player.
Definitely. All right, now we have Chaos.
Chaos, the Knights Before Xmas, coached by Dan Cole.
I have a lot to say about this team.
Of course you do.
Please, by all means.
It's my first matchup, and I was concerned when I saw it was Chaos, but I looked at the composition, and this isn't what is considered a standard setup. 1 Chaos Warrior, 1 Minotaur, then filling out with Beastmen and 3 team rerolls. 30 TV under. Not very high strength, no blocking or dodging skills. As Chaos Dwarves, I'm probably going to pick this team apart quite easily.
Yes,
because there's no skills here. They don't have a high strength that's typical with Chaos, at least not distributed amongst the whole team. It's all kind of focused on the Minotaur. So if you ground that Minotaur and boot him from the team, this team is going to be seriously hamstrung going forward.
Yeah, Chaos teams do not have any players that start with like block or dodge. They don't have a lot of skills to start off.
Yeah, they have to rely on their strength.
Yes, Chaos is a very weak team early on, but can snowball very quickly if you let them. My issue with this is the fact that they only took 1 Chaos Warrior. Part of the strength of the Chaos team is having multiple Chaos Warriors with that Minotaur, so they have multiple Strength 4 and a Strength 5. That power is what gives them some of their bashy potential early on to get them to snowball.
And like I said, I'm in total agreement here. You're not playing into the Chaos strength, which is the Chaos Warriors, and you're kind of like focusing. You're putting all your eggs in one basket for the Minotaur to actually kill people going off the line. Now, if I was this Chaos coach, I would definitely go for like if you were facing against these Chaos Dwarfs and you win the coin toss, I would definitely try to be on the offensive side, because you're going to be wanting to take out as many of those blocking units as you possibly can with your Minotaur on your offensive drive. But that being said, if you can't do that, then this team, I think, has a good chance of stalling, and that is a real shame.
I completely agree with that.
See, it's interesting that you're saying that, because from the other side of the table, I'm actually hoping to go on the defensive. Because I don't think that with getting 1 blitz with horns every turn, that this team can do enough damage to win a drive. And I think in the course of them winning the drive, because I have block, they'll actually injure themselves more than they'll injure me. So that's interesting that you're saying that.
Yes. Statistically, yes.
I'm hoping that I go on the defensive, and then my drive will be easier, being as they don't have an apothecary and all their players will be dead.
Yeah. With the Minotaur start, not having an apothecary is definitely going to be a hard time, because you block down that Minotaur, and if he dies, you have no apothecary. You've just lost 150k of your team value. What do you do then?
Absolutely. Those Minotaurs and Chaos Warriors are expensive, but they are necessary.
All right. Next team then?
Yes, the vampire team, coached by LK Magnifico, Le Battalion. This is the team I'm supposed to be facing for my first match. We played one half before technical difficulties occur, and we had to reset it. They elected to take 2 vampires and 9 thralls with 5 team rerolls and 7 fan factor.
I don't agree with the use of fan factor, but they've gone for a very reliable setup with only 2 vampires. Obviously, the concern with vampires is that the bloodlust soaks a lot of dice rolls, and by probability, you're eventually going to fail them. So you need to focus on rerolls to account for your vampire's bloodlust. Fan factor this early in the season, it's a waste of money in my opinion. If they sold 7 fan factor right now, they could buy another reroll or an apothecary. Like what are they using the fan factor for?
I think
Yeah,
the
that's a
intent
good
with
point.
fan factor is to get more gold early on and be able to rise in fan factor and have a really high fan factor value late in the season, so that they'll be racking in a lot of gold.
That's
I see
banking on
that.
wins, though. If
It
he
is banking on
loses
actually winning.
matches, he's going to be losing fan factor.
I'd rather win more consistently than earn more if I win inconsistently.
Now,
It is
okay,
definitely
so
a gamble.
with vampires, there's a 2 vampire setup, a 3 vampire setup, and a 4 vampire setup. Now, the very conservative one, of course, is the 2 vampire setup, and that is kind of like throwing more rerolls into your team than you would vampires. I think you could do very well in this particular league, in this particular tournament, with a 3 vampire setup, because that extra strength is going to really help out. And you wouldn't be losing that much, because you get that vampire with just getting rid of that fan factor.
Yeah. I agree. Again, like I said before, it's a very low strength league in general, especially with that chaos being out with only 1 chaos warrior. Having 3 strength 4, agility 4 players is incredibly valuable. I don't see the need in the fan factor. I think it's wasted funds. It does affect the kickoff events, which is apparently what one of the major considerations was of the coach. But I don't see it. For an inconsistent benefit, I would rather just have more consistency.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how that plays out. And one thing I will give the coach, LK Magnifico, I have played games against vampire teams that he has coached before, and like in this, he likes to go for that 2 vampire route, having less bloodlust rolls. And one thing I will give him, I have never seen him fail a bloodlust roll.
Yeah, he shouldn't even have the rerolls. He just get rid of all those and just get like 4 vampires then. I'm
Have you ever
being
seen them
completely
win a
sarcastic,
fan
of course.
a fan factor event then?
Yeah, I don't think
I
I've seen
don't
them
know
always
all the
either.
details of how fan factor influences the kickoff table.
Because if you've never seen that and you've never seen them fail a bloodlust, I would rather have another 1 bloodlust fail over the course of the game than to have the fan factor event for 2 drives.
Agreed.
I agree with you. I think if he did not take the fan factor and instead removed one of those thralls and had a 3rd vampire, he would be in a much better situation. That one half that I did play with him earlier today, having a 3rd vampire would have put me in a much worse situation than what it came out to be.
Yeah. There's a reason it's the standard setup.
Yeah, and not only that, it is very easy to isolate 2 vampires on the pitch than it is to isolate maybe 3. And there's far more play compositions that you can do with a 3 vampire setup than a 2 vampire setup.
All right. Shall we move on then?
Of course.
On to Doximus Maximus and the Hanna-Barbarians, the first of our 2 undead teams. They have bought 2 mummies, 2 whites, 2 ghouls, and 5 zombies, along with 3 team rerolls.
Pretty standard setup.
Yeah, this is a wonderful setup because he has all those strength, all the block that he needs. He has the 2 ghouls. Now, the other setup with undead involves 4 ghouls setup. So you have those extra ball carriers and dodge on the pitch. But this is pretty strong here still. He's decided to elect for the zombies instead of skeletons. So he sacrificed movement for armor. That's fine because we have a more bashy league. So I think that that's a pretty solid choice in this case. Maybe he could have even elected for maybe like one skeleton and still would have had a very solid lineup here.
When
Yeah,
I
my
spoke
only
to
complaint-
the coach, when I spoke to the coach as I was helping them with they are very new to the game, so they asked for some advice. I did present them with the comparison of zombies and skeletons, and they elected to take zombies due to the bashy nature of the squad.
That's fair.
Yeah, my only complaint with this team so far looking at it is I only see 4 ball carriers with the 2 whites and the 2 ghouls. They have the 3 agility to allow them to be a decent ball carrier, but the rest of the team has 2 agility and 1 agility. So I feel they're going to have some difficulty picking up the ball and carrying the ball.
And yeah,
But
this is exactly
players
what I
have
said
dodge
about
and
the
block, though, so
Lizard Man
reliable.
team.
Yeah, it's the same complaint I had with the Lizardman team. Like Desmond said, they do have those agility 3 players do have the dodges and blocks. So we'll see how that comes about.
On the subject of the Hanna-Barbarians, it seems that the coach has returned.
Things don't appear to be on fire anymore.
Woo!
That is good to know.
All right.
Yes.
Well, you'll have to give us a moment. We're finishing up team reviews.
That's totally fine. I have to restart everything anyway.
All right.
All right.
I think that's the Hanna-Barbarians. So go on to JK.
Moving on to GK by Coach Alantor. This team is interesting. This Dark Elf team has elected to buy 4 blitzers and 7 linemen.
This is actually a very solid initial setup because the blitzers are going to be like the core of your team. The only other addition you could really make is maybe throwing a runner in here, but that's not going to cause like a really big deal. We have like a super bashy lineup as far as the tournament is concerned. So I'm not sure that having that runner in here is really going to cause that big of difficulty, especially since the Dark Elves already have 4 agility for picking up the ball and handling it in other ways.
Agreed. They have really good ball handlers with agility 4, really good dodges. Those blitzers are going to be really strong.
The coach didn't want to actually put a target on a player as the ball carrier, and they felt that if they took a runner, that would sort of shoehorn them into a play that could be perceived. So they wanted to go for more of a versatile setup, which this is also a standard setup, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong,
No,
but I
it
think
totally
this is with 4 agility, 2 rerolls, you're not going to be failing many dodge or pickups. Block on 4 players, a lot good attacking. They have 7 movement, so good for carrying the ball. I respect it. 10k lets you get your apothecary up earlier. Solid.
I do indeed respect this team. All right, moving on to the Bretonian team with Coach Saint Guard, Les Miserable, which you are here now. Welcome to the team analysis.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about your choices here in the team composition?
Yeah, I went for a team that was a little bit more blitzer heavy. Partly because Bretonian blitzers are 1, very good, and 2, we're in a very bashy league with some very strong opponents. So I elected for more blitzers than anything else. Also, a couple of rerolls and an apothecary to start off as well.
I've noticed that you elected not to take the other 2 blockers. Was there any reasoning behind this?
It mostly came down to money, so I could get an apothecary. Gonna be honest.
Okay, so you kind of elected for an early apothecary because you perceived that there was going to be a lot of damage happening in the early rounds.
Yeah, the last 2 games I played with my orc team, and I found that with the dice that Neville gives me, I usually end up with at least 1 dead or at least a few injured players. So just keeping that in the back pocket.
One thing that Bretonian teams and this Bretonian team will have difficulty, is in those team rerolls. He only has 2 team rerolls, both of which cost 70k, and once the first match starts, those team rerolls are going to be 140k apiece.
Yeah.
That
I would
is
have
entirely true.
suggested to drop one of the blitzers. They are very good, but I would have suggested dropping one of the blitzers in exchange for another team reroll, and then going for another lineman. The Fend lineman, very good at delaying, and having only 5 of them maybe weakens your wall capabilities because you need a 6th to really double up. But I
The other
understand
option,
blitzers are good.
the other option actually is taking one less blitzer and getting all of your blockers, especially if you do run into a more bashy kind of league, because the blockers are very good for removing assists. They're very good for removing people with dodge and block, and that way you can kind of get that penetration, get that ball through there. With this setup, though, you still have a large number of skills. You have six positionals with skills, and I still think that gives you kind of like a little bit of a head over advantage than some of the other teams that maybe have some skills already.
This question of how many blitzers and linesmen fits perfectly into your next opponent, who is next in line. The Lame Imapala with Coach Nuttafern, the Nurgle team.
Scary is the word that
Scary.
springs to mind.
Yeah,
This team scares me, even as Chaos Dwarfs.
Yeah, I mean, like Nurgle is chaos with the numbers filed off and kind of another number kind of randomly written there, because you have everything that chaos can do, and then a couple of other things. It's like some people even call it chaos light. They have some initial skills. They have some throwaway rotters because of the decay, but that's not too much of a problem because you have other things that you can do here.
I would not be concerned about those rotters, especially with the Nurgle's rot ability that every Nurgle player has.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know
rely on that, but it's nice.
Yes, the Nurgle's rot ability, whenever you kill an opposing player during a block, blitz, or foul action, the infected opponent becomes a new rookie rotter. The opponent's strength cannot exceed 4, and he cannot have the decay, regeneration, or stunty skills.
So one thing to note is that this team is probably the joint most strength-focused team in line with the Lizardmen. These Lizardmen and the Nurgle team, the heaviest hitters of the game so far, I think.
I absolutely agree with that, and it'll be very interesting to see how they interact with our most agile team, the High Elves.
Yeah, I think the most interesting matchup will be when this team runs into the Lizardman team, because both of them are very kind of strong setups.
Yes, that will be a very interesting
lots
match
of
and a very
strength being
entertaining
thrown
match.
around. Yeah.
Those will be 2 very, very strong bashy teams going head-to-head against each other. I would
know who I'd
expect
put
to
my
see a
money
lot
on.
of blood in that match.
With foul appearance on those Nurgle warriors, I know who I'd put my money on.
There is a problem with this team, though, and if you look over on the left, you'll notice that there's only one team reroll, and they've elected to buy a cheerleader and a coach assistant, which means that the opponent is going to have a 20k greater inducement going forward as well. If you get one level, your opponent is going to be getting a Bloodwiser babe, so you got to really pay attention to that.
That is indeed very interesting. But that one team reroll is really going to hurt them in the long run, I believe, because after that first match again, Nurgle has a very expensive team reroll cost. It's going to be 140 apiece. They're not going to have a lot of team rerolls over the course of this season.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else they could have done other than maybe taken one less Pestigore for another reroll. But I think that they've played enough in the ladder matches that they've realized the strength of having a second ball carrier. Granted, the Rotters can carry the ball too, but if you level up a Rotter, you might be better off kind of kicking them from the team, because that's a lot of team value to be setting up into somebody that's just going to die.
I completely agree with that. All right, let us move on to our human team, the Imperial Conscripts, led by Coach Myrdal. I feel like a pretty standard human team. 1 ogre, 1 thrower, 4 blitzers, and 5 linemen.
Yeah, this is a standard Bashy human team lineup. Of course, because of the addition of the ogre. It's strange that it's not totally strange that he didn't choose his throwers, because he did elect to get the ogre, and the ogre is pretty expensive.
That
but
ogre is
40K,
expensive at 130k.
Yeah, with 40k, I think he could have gotten a catcher over a lineman. Not a huge deal, because again, like I was saying earlier, catchers tend to get more experience on them and kind of like out level the rest of your team. So, but the only problem is you have this thrower that he's going to have to run the ball essentially. So he's going to want to either level up his thrower or his blitzers very quickly so that they can help kind of support the team.
Yeah,
absolutely agree with that.
I actually saw that earlier. I was going through the teams myself, and I noticed an interesting choice that they elect to take a thrower and no catcher.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
the third
that's
team actually who have catcher roles and have elected to not take a catcher.
Yeah, indeed.
So maybe that says something, but I'm not too sure. One thing that
we'll
I
see
have
how that shakes
noticed, one thing that I have noticed about human teams is they are a very flexible team. They are capable of being a bashy team. They are also capable of being a pretty agile team and passy team. Given with how bashy this league is, I think it would be pertinent to lean towards a more agile team to counteract those bashy teams.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
the
and
first skill on the
maybe not.
blitzers has to be dodge every time.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
It is definitely a thought.
I think the human team was actually a decent choice, because again, you're looking at the armor here, and with a lot of your more dodgy teams, you're not going to have nearly as much armor as this. So especially if you're a beginning player, an armor value 8 team is incredibly baseline, incredibly solid team to kind of work with going forward, because you don't know like how many cracks are going to happen in your armor at armor value 7. And those teams can kind of crumble under the pressure of all these bashy teams.
A lot. That's all I can tell you, Slight. A lot. All right. Let us move on to our final team, the Reaper's Revenge with Coach Majestic Raven. This is our second undead team. Now this is
Second
interesting.
Go ahead.
They have gone for a more all-around with their player composition. They have 2 mummies, 2 whites, 2 ghouls, 3 zombies, and 2 skeletons.
Yeah, and this is kind of the setup that I was kind of mentioning before, where it's kind of similar to the other setup. Instead of just zombies all the way down the line, electing for a couple of skeletons so they have that extra flexibility of movement to throw around assists here and there. The only thing that I maybe don't agree with is the cheerleader, but it's 10K. It's not going to make a huge difference. I mean, until it does, I suppose.
I mean, your next skeleton is 10K more expensive, and it's 10K. It's 10 extra TV. I would never take a cheerleader.
Yeah,
with a
me
team
either.
that's already low on TV. You have to have a severe lead to be able to justify going into things like cheerleader and coaching and fan factor.
I totally agree.
But they do have 3 team rerolls. They're on the higher end of the average for the league with the 3.
It's a very solid number of team rerolls. I think that's about the sweet spot that most teams
very
should
solid,
be in.
and considering their 70k cost and going to be 140 after the first match, it was a good idea taking 3.
There you have it. That's
There
all
you
of
have
the
it.
teams.
All 12
See-
teams. How do you guys feel overall? Who are you looking at in particular? Do you have a favorite so far?
Well, we can look at the schedule if you want going forward.
Absolutely. For the first week, I posted the schedule earlier this morning. Our first match, the Lizardman team, Bog Schlortz, versus the Undead team, Reaper's Revenge.
I mean, I think the undead team has more passing potential, so I think they'll probably end up taking the game. But will they survive intact? Probably not, with so many strength fours. Luckily, they have the mummies to start to pick them apart. But it's gonna be an interesting game in the bash. Definitely undead leaning for the pass.
Now,
Yeah.
the one thing that could happen here is undead. They start out with regeneration on many of their units. I think all their units actually, except for the ghouls. So if the Lizardmen team does not target the ghouls, then there is a higher likelihood that the undead team will be able to weather the blows because they have regeneration, whereas the Lizardmen do not have an apothecary. So early injuries could actually swing the match very, very extensively.
Yeah, the
Something
undead
I-
can bounce back.
And I would highly
Something I
expect
would-
that to
oh.
influence those teams in the long run, depending on which team gets broken down more in this first match.
Something I would say for the Lizardman team, speaking with from a little bit of experience playing against Lizardman teams, is you can never discount those skinks. If that skink gets a ball, it's going to be very hard to get,
Yeah,
especially for this undead
while
team.
I agree that the skinks are a concern, with the ghouls, you can actually box down a few skinks, and if you're pushing in the rest of the team, it doesn't matter because as soon as the skinks score, you've got half of their team dead. It is a concern. Obviously, skinks are always a concern. They just run between your players with stunty, but I still would say it's at most equal on the scoring game.
All right, our second match is the Knights Before Xmas, our Chaos team, and the Cavalcade of Destruction, our Chaos Dwarf team. This is very interesting that Chaos and Chaos Dwarves meet up in the very first week.
Chaos fight.
So my big concern here is the obvious advantage is in favor of the Chaos Dwarves merely because of all the skills, all the block is going to be coming to bear on the opponent. The only thing that might be going in favor is what I mentioned earlier, is if that Chaos team is managed to take a good enough advantage of Claw on the front line to take down as many dwarfs as possible. And that's a big if because there is wild animal there, and that could always just halt that drive.
Abso-freaking-lutely. I also am going to give this one most likely to the Chaos Dwarf teams, especially with how bashy Chaos Dwarves are. Normally, Chaos is just as bashy and could potentially match up with them, but with the Knights Before Xmas electing to only take a single Chaos Warrior, their bashiness has been extremely limited in this sense. And I think that's going to really hurt them in this match.
Even with Mighty Blow, even with the Mighty Blow and the Minotaur that you were talking about, I think you said Claw, but I think you meant Mighty Blow. It's still against Armor 9, and with Thick Skull, the KO removals are even more rare. It's not looking good for Chaos. They might be able to pass around the dwarves if enough of them stay standing, but I don't know. It's looking heavily in my favor as the Chorfs.
But as we know, in the end, regardless of the result, Chaos wins.
Chaos
That's
reigns
true.
supreme.
Chaos reigns supreme. All right, our next
All right,
match.
and then match 3.
This match is
Also,
myself
anyone
as
who
the
went up against
Amazons
the ladder
versus...
knows that
I'm
the
sorry?
dice hate people against me. Anyone who went up against me in the ladder knows that. The dice love me. So
You're not
sorry,
wrong.
Dice
Desmond.
hate me in general.
All right, moving
Even
on to
more
match number
difficult.
3 with the Amazonian Duelists versus Lay Battalion. This is my match against LK Magnifico.
Yes, the one that we had to reschedule because of technical difficulties.
Technical
We saw the first half.
difficulties!
we saw the first half of this match, and it was 1-0 in favor of the Amazonian duelists. However, both teams had I know the Amazons had an injured player, and also there were some KOs on the field as well. So
Yes, I was severely outnumbered by the end of the first half.
But like a dream, that never happened. And in theory, the Amazons still have an edge over the vampire team because of the skills that they have to bear. Dodging all the players, 4 blitzers. It's going to be hard to take these Amazons down. And granted, if they are taken down, they have 7 armor and they will crumble a little bit. Still having Blodge on 4 players is going to be very tough for these vampires to take a hold of, especially with only 2 vampires on the field.
Yeah, with 2 vampires, it's very easy for the Amazonians to split in on their drive to split into a ball-carrying cage and a contingent of blitzers just taking out all the thralls. If you're splitting up the vampires there and only one vampire gets to make a blitz at a time, you can easily screen off that vampire and dodge away and score the goals whilst killing the rest of the team, and then there'll just be no substance there.
I absolutely agree, and I have high hopes for this first match. Moving on, we have the Hanna-Barbarians and the Secret Pardons. This is our other match that had to get rescheduled because of technical difficulties.
now this one was very interesting from what we watched. We watched this from the beginning to until it was turn 3 when the technical difficulties happened, and the Hanna-Barbarians, they were making a good cage, but the thing is that elf team can get in very quickly and has the agility on their side for
Yes,
pretty much everything.
When technical difficulties occurred, the High Elf team was prepared to score on the very next turn.
Yeah, and I would say that though this team is very bashy and relatively flexible, its positionals are very focused, whereas the elf team has very flexible positionals, and they can do a variety of tasks. So you only have 4 ball carriers with this team, and in the eventuality that these ball carriers go down, namely the ghouls do not have regeneration if you look at it, whereas all the other positionals do. And because of that, the ghouls, once they get injured, they're out of the pitch, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, but don't always 7, they're easy to harm too.
Yeah,
Dodge
exactly.
protects them a little bit, but it's still you can still both down with a blocker, and the ghouls are highly likely to become KO'd or injured.
I would say with the right positioning, an undead coach can do very well against an elf team. So this could go either direction, I think.
You have to respect the elf horse shit in the background. You have to leave the ghouls behind to catch elves.
Exactly.
In the fight, they are not useful. You just have to leave them like 6 spaces back, and if any elves come through, just 2 dice them with both ghouls and try to keep them back that way.
You should always anticipate elf bullshit to occur.
Yep.
Elf bullshit is wonderful. Alright, moving on to our next match. GK, the Dark Elves, versus Imperial Conscripts, the human team.
Ooh, this is going to be a fun match.
This is indeed going to be a very fun match, and I have no idea where this one's going to go. This could go either way.
This is definitely going to be one of those back and forth games where the Dark Elves have to pick their opportunities to get a careful 2 dice with block in on a human to score, because you can't just bash as Dark Elves against an ogre human team, and it's slightly more difficult to just play passing elf games with Dark Elves against humans. And so you kind of got to be versatile there.
And whereas in the previous game, the undead team versus the high elf team has only 4 ball carriers, the human team has far more ball carrying potentials than the undead team. So they have a little bit more flexibility with regards to moving the ball down the pitch, so they don't have that same weakness. So it is entirely possible for the human team to kind of get that ball dodged away and away from the elves, or to just simply punch down elves with their high strength and their mighty blow on their ogre.
Yeah, that both of these coaches are newer players. They haven't experienced much Blood Bowl, so I'm kind of expecting this to divulge into like a a split down the middle of the field, waiting for a good contingent of blocks before running in. It's probably going to lean more towards the human team, I actually think,
Oh,
in my
okay.
predictions.
I'm kind of like relatively biased towards elves in my opinion, because when you don't know a play shouldn't work, it'll work. And with elves, that tends to happen because you only need a 2+ on a dodge with 4 agility.
I see
So a lot of
Trademark elf
craziness can
bull.
happen.
It
Exactly.
might actually come down. It might come down to if somebody would tell the human coach first, don't commit all of your humans to the front lines and keep some to catch elves.
Yes.
I think with just that, the humans would easily defeat most of the stray elves that filter through. But I suppose we'll see when it comes to the game.
All right, our sixth and final match: Les Miserables versus Lame Impala. This is our Bretonian team versus our
Les
Nurgle team.
Miserables.
Another
Nurgle is
amazing
scary.
match.
Another interesting match, and I feel for both teams. Because
Nurgle is scary.
Bretonian Blitzers are
However,
something else, but a Nurgle team is very, very strong.
we were concerned about the fact that Nurgle were probably the second or joint first strongest team. The fact that 4 blitzers were taken on this lower TV Bretonian team, with 4 Dauntless, we might actually see a viable bash between the Bretonians and the Nurgle.
Yeah, with the
It
skills,
would be risky, but
with
we
the
might
skill
see.
composition of the Bretonian team, I definitely give them a little bit of an edge here going in versus these Nurgle.
There's no way Nurgle are scoring. No way. They're bad enough as it is on the passing game, but with Fend and Wrestle, there's no way. Now, can they win the fight? If you are fending, you're taking more blocks. If you choose to take the fall, you're allowing more passes through. If you bounce to 2, I think you can actually get these blitzers to kill this beast of Nurgle in the first round, and that is my dream as the Chorfs player, because that beast of Nurgle is the scariest thing in this entire league.
I think that the problem could happen is if those peasants go down early, because if those peasants go down early, the blocks are going to swing in favor of the Nurgle team.
Yeah.
This is definitely going to be an interesting match to see play out, indeed.
Definitely.
Well, I believe that is all the time we have. We have multiple players around ready to play their match, so we should probably let them do that so we can have our commentators.
I want a Blood Bowl!
Dan Cole is ready to Blood Bowl. The Chaos team is so ready.
Let's bowl some blood!
Thank you all for joining. Again, this was myself, Phoenix Reborn. Slight Quills was joining me on the analysis, as well as Guardsman and Desmond. Thank you guys for joining me on this. It was a pleasure.
No, you're welcome.
And we'll see you guys around.